Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Thank you very much to the hosts of the breakout sessions, all very interesting. So we are going to go now to our second keynote conversation. After that, we've got an address by Ismael Morán from Atlantic Area, or Ismael Morán-García, sorry, to give him his correct title, his correct surname. And then we have a Q&A session. So I'm going to invite Aonghus Mc Nabola from Trinity College Dublin to manage the keynote conversation 2, which is called Challenges to Adoption and Capitalization. So, Aonghus, over to you at this point.
Thanks very much, Terry. Hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us. So as Terry said, my name is Aonghus Mc Nabola. I'm Head of Civil Engineering at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, and also been working on the REDAWN project, particularly on work package 4, some of you we've already spoken to in the breakout session. So for this second keynote, we have a number of speakers here who are going to address the topic of the session, which was, as Terry mentioned, challenges to the adoption and capitalization of micro hydropower. So challenges to the adoption is obvious what that might be, and capitalization is what our funding agency refers to as capitalizing on the results of our REDAWN project. And so before I get to introduce our 4 panel experts, I just want to set the scene a little bit for you into so what those challenges might be from my own point of view. And of course, I welcome particularly questions from everyone at the end. So the challenges to the adoption of micro hydropower in water networks, when I think about that, I wonder, or I first start to think about the fact that hydropower has existed in water networks, at least in drinking water networks, for quite a long time. And so I wonder, well, if that is the case, why do we need a REDAWN project, or why do we need a conference like this today to talk about it? And so there are a number of reasons behind that, some of which are kind of technical reasons to do with the technology. And, particularly, well, there are a few issues, but particularly about the miniaturization of conventional turbines. And so within the REDAWN project, I think we did a good job in highlighting the role of pumps as turbines to meet that technical challenge. But there are also a number of non-technical challenges. So that, I guess in the first keynote, a lot of those technical challenges were discussed. So the non-technical challenges are much harder to address, I think. And so again, in the first keynote, some of the speakers alluded to that, things like the inertia or the conservatism of some of the organizations involved in adopting hydropower. And so if you think about our pilot plants and the opportunities we have identified, these are often small powers individually, a number of kilowatts, between 5 and 20 or 25 typically. And so individually they have a small return, but collectively we've also shown that there is quite a huge number of them across the Atlantic area. So, within the 3 years of the REDAWN project, we identified almost 9,000 sites in the Atlantic area region. And we would have identified a lot more than that had we more time. So there's a huge number of places where this could be put in. So collectively, they are a significant energy resource. And if they were all exploited, and of course, there's technical issues that they mightn't all be possible, then that could make a significant difference to the energy efficiency of drinking water or of food production via irrigation. So those kind of non-technical challenges, I'd be interested to hear from the speakers as to how they think that those could be addressed. So these are kind of challenges in regulation and in organizational inertia and so on. And also I think we have a challenge in terms of communication and in spreading the message. So we are in the REDAWN project been working to a certain extent on this for the last 3 years, and we hope to continue to do that for the next little while. But there is a challenge to get these results and the story we're telling here to companies and to policymakers. So with that little scene setting, I want to hand over to our speaker. So we have 4 speakers from a diverse range of organizations. We have Pedro Amaral Jorge, the CEO of APREN, the Portuguese Association of Renewable Energies.
Morning.
Hi. So I'll come to Pedro first in a second. We also have Joaquin Villar Rodriguez, who's the head of Internationalization and Perspective Department of the Andalusian Energy Agency. We have
Hello.
Simon. Hello. Yeah. And we have Simon Hamlyn, the CEO of British Hydropower Association, I think. And also then we have Vincent Railliet, from the president of SMPGA, who was one of our partners in the REDAWN project, a water utility in France. So I'll hand over first. So each of the speakers are going to make a short 5-minute presentation, then we'll have questions at the end. So hand over to Pedro to begin with, from the Portuguese Association of Renewable Energies.
Well, just let me know if you can hear me.
Hear you fine.
Okay, so
Thanks.
Thank you very much once again for the opportunity, to Professor Helena Ramos for having me here. As you mentioned previously, I'm the CEO of the Board of Directors of the Portuguese Renewable Energy Association, and we represent almost 14 gigawatts of power. And those 15 gigawatts of power are spread around all technologies, and we represent 92% of all the renewable installed power in Portugal. We've been making advocacy on policy on basically all the technologies. We have a very representative share of hydro in Portugal, both from large hydro to small hydro, micro hydro. We don't have that relevant number of projects represented by APREN. We have around 370 megawatt of small hydro, and we've been fighting to actually make sure that this energy source continues to be developed, although we understand that today we are facing new constraints. And the constraints that we are facing are basically, one is environmental, the other is biodiversity preservation. And we are also facing a challenge on what we call the levelized cost of electricity from renewables. When we look at the recent results from prices that were achieved during some auctions, where PV and wind were auctioned, and we are now arriving at values of a levelized cost of electricity of around 30 for wind, which is completely unprecedented in Spain in last January. Although water and electricity are a very old joint venture, I would say that from an energy perspective, it will be the oldest in terms of using sustainably the resource of water to produce electricity. And so I think there is a space for this renewable component. Basically, we need just to understand how we integrate them into communities and to local energy service providing as the new model for the clean energy package is bringing us to. So the citizenship at the center of the energy transition, and power completely spread all over a territory to make sure that we blend all of these three options for generating power from water, wind, and sun. And this is the state that we are in Portugal. We, just to give you one or two numbers, which I think are representative, we achieved last year 62% of renewables penetration of our electricity mix. Basically, the biggest contribution was hydro with around 28 to 30%. We have targets to achieve in 2030 that are going to take us to more or less 30 gigawatt, which will be 10 of hydro, 10 of wind, and 10 of PV and other sun options. This does not include yet what we've been developing in Portugal as another source of storing energy and using clean energy, which is green hydrogen. So I'm assuming an extra 5 to 6 gigawatt will be required to generate green hydrogen. And the challenge we have now is making all of this work, including the market, the funding, the environmental aspect, the population coverage, the inclusion of people in this transition. And of course, coming to where I started, small and micro hydro do have a part, because we are spreading the population. We need to bring it back to spread outside of cities. And this is also a resource that needs to be looked at very carefully. We just need to keep in mind that people always watch the cost of power, and for them, the price of power. And we need to make sure that we can balance this in a way that if it's blended into other technologies, it can actually have a complementary effect, both on reducing the cost and also in increasing the renewable matrix on the power that it is provided. And I would stop here for my 3 minutes, and I'm completely available for questions, and I'll be here the full hour. And please just let me know what you need from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. That was very helpful. We'll hold the questions until the end of this session. So I'll hand over next to Joaquin Villar Rodriguez. If you
yes,
you're there, yeah. So
yes, I will share my screen. I don't know if you can see.
See it well, yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes, thank you for inviting the Andalusian Energy Agency. I'm representing as head of the international department. And yes, I would like to introduce briefly Andalusia. And Andalusia is a very big region. We have more than 8 million inhabitants. We are greater than if we talk about population, we will be the 3rd region in Europe. And if we talk about the area, it's almost 90,000 square kilometers. So we are greater than 40 countries in Europe. So we are a big region. And for that, we have a high number of companies, a lot of them in renewable sectors. It's a quite important sector in Andalusia. We have also a high number of qualified working population and universities at the University of Cordoba, but also other 9 public universities in Andalusia. The Andalusia Energy Agency is a public entity that was launched by the regional government of Andalusia to promote the use of renewable energy, the energy savings, demand management. We want also to promote and disseminate the principle of energy culture. We want to have a very balanced land planning for territorial cohesion in Andalusia, but also it's important the business sector. We want to create jobs and we want to develop the industry related to the energy sector. And for that, we have several actions that can be split in 4 main actions. The first is the energy planning of Andalusia and their infrastructure. The second one is the energy management network of the Andalusia regional government. We manage more than 4,000, the energy consumption of more than 4,000 buildings in Andalusia. And also we manage the financial scheme and the incentive scheme in Andalusia. We have incentivized in the last 4 years more than 9,000 projects, most of them in the renewable area. And of course, we are quite interested in the internationalization and capitalization of the result of these projects. Talking about renewable energy, we have quintuplied in the last 2 years the contribution of renewable energy in going from 20% to 43%. This great development of renewable energy in Andalusia has allowed us to reduce by 56% the CO2 emissions. And we are leading in Andalusia some technologies in renewables as solar thermal power plants. We have 22 solar thermal power plants in Andalusia, but we think that is we see that is a sector with a huge potential of development in Andalusia. We have identified investment in Andalusia of more than 70,000 million euros associated with the renewable energy. That's mean energy power of more than 26,000 megawatts in the coming years. If we achieve to have these figures, we make Andalusia the region that contribute most to the national energy objectives. But we need also a very strong electricity network, and we are collaborating with the national government to reinforce the electricity network. And around the energy around this sector, to highlight as I mentioned, the number of companies that are working in renewable energy sector, the jobs created in this sector. The regional government is quite committed with the development of the renewables in our region, and to develop also the innovation associated with universities and research centers. And specifically talking about REDAWN project, we have been participating, not so much is true, but as far as we could capitalize the result of REDAWN, we have developed some activities. You can see here, this is, I think it's Miguel Crespo of your team, REDAWN team, in a delegation with in a delegation with from Tunisia, the Ministry Agriculture of Tunisia. Miguel Crespo was there explaining the project REDAWN. So as conclusion, we can say that this project is totally aligned with our energy strategy. We would like to exploit all the renewable potential in our territory, and I think that this energy recovery for existing water network is a good opportunity. Currently, we are working in a project, also an European project called Poverty, that the aim of this project is to provide with renewable energy people who are affected by fuel poverty, energy poverty. And I think that this kind of technology, cost technology, could be implemented as a set of technology, as Pedro commented, in local communities, energy communities, could be easily be implemented as a technology. So I think that at least for us, and in collaboration with the University of Cordoba, the project doesn't end here. We will continue. We would like to explore all the potential of this technology in the next future. And this is all from my side.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. Very, very interesting, very useful contribution, and also great timekeeping as well. So next on the list of speakers is Simon Hamlyn, the CEO of the British Hydropower Association. Is Simon there for his?
Yep, I'm here.
5 minutes. So over to you, Simon. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and welcome to everybody who's been on the call so far. I was unable to join you until now due to other commitments, but I'm the Chief Executive of the British Hydropower Association, which is the representative body for hydropower in the UK. Our role is to represent the best interests of our members, which range from small scale Pico Hydro through to some of the largest utilities operating across the country. We have about 285 members that include single site operators and multi-site operators. It includes pump storage, run-of-river, tidal range, and all types of hydropower in between. We have grown as an association on the back of the government's feed-in tariff scheme. The feed-in tariff scheme was introduced in 2011 by the then government to encourage the deployment of renewable energy, and it basically provided an income based on the kilowatts generated per hour to individual generators that included hydropower, solar, wind, and AD. And because of the generous terms of that subsidy that started off in 2011, in some cases for hydro, up to 23 pence, I can't work that out in euros, per hour, a lot of schemes were built off the back of the feed-in tariff. And they ranged in scale from, as I mentioned before, small 5 to 10 kilowatt schemes up to 2 to 3 megawatt schemes. And that has been the way in which hydropower in the UK has developed in the past 10 years. The problem being it has been a victim of its own success, because as the number of schemes, in particular in hydro, developed over the past 10 years, the government sought to reduce the size of the tariff so as to control the budget that had already been set for the feed-in tariff and which was in danger of being breached, which in case it did happen. So in that time, over 1,000 hydropower generation stations have been built across the country, generating in excess of 200 megawatts annually. The government decided in its wisdom to close this scheme at the end of March in 2019. So up until the end of March 2019, there was a wave of applicants to access the scheme to ensure they could develop more hydro schemes in the future. That led to a kind of cliff edge situation where a lot of hydro schemes couldn't get built because it didn't reach the cutoff point in time. What that has led to is that between now and the end of March 2022, approximately a further 35 to 40 megawatts of hydropower capacity, varying in size from small scale 10 up to 1.2 megawatt size schemes, will get built in the UK. Once the scheme closes, we have the issue then of how we continue to provide development opportunities for new hydropower stations now that the feed-in tariff system has been closed to new entrants. The people that already have access to the scheme have 20 years from the date of access to enjoy the feed-in tariff. So many of those schemes will start dropping off towards the end of 2031, 32. So the challenge for the UK hydro industry is how to deploy more hydro without the current government support. A number of initiatives have been looked at, especially in the small scale Pico micro hydro that don't need significant infrastructure costs and can survive off either private wire energy to local businesses or communities, or indeed through personal investment in hydropower schemes. The days of the very large, in our case, 1 to 2 megawatt schemes, we don't envisage that happening for some time due to the government's commitment to try and ensure all renewables are subsidy free. I think the disappointment from our perspective is that all this has taken place in advance of COP26, which is all about renewable energy and green agenda. So we have a significant challenge ahead of us to try and encourage new deployment for hydro in the light of the fact that our subsidies no longer exist. A lot of our members have built successful businesses off the back of the feed-in tariff and are now looking to diversify into other aspects of hydro, such as O&M, or looking at developing very, very small scale Pico hydro systems. And in fact, I would suggest that over the past 12 months, I've had about 100 inquiries about setting up small scale Pico hydro systems across the country. Some of our members already have Pico hydro systems in place, but making them work without the subsidy in the future, as I said before, will be a significant challenge. But our role at the BHA is to help our members best we can. So we lobby our governments in England, Scotland, Wales, and in Northern Ireland, which is a challenge in itself because they all do things differently. And the regional regulators in England, Wales, and Scotland, who again all do things differently. So the challenges are multifold. We're keen to continue building the development of hydro in the future, but the challenge we face is how we do it without any form of government subsidy. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Simon. Very interesting, touches on some pretty important issues there for the future of what we're talking about here in REDAWN. So last but not least, our speaker is Vincent Railliet, from the president of SMPGA in France, and Vincent will be giving his 5-minute talk in French. So I think we may need to switch to the French translation, or well, I will anyways. I mean, for those of you that can speak French, to the interpretation button on the bottom. So over to Vincent. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vincent Railliet, and I am the president of SNPGA, which is a partner of REDAWN project. From the beginning of my elected missions in 2014, I have been interested in the water domain because I am fully aware of climate change impact of its resource. To continue, let me speak to you in French. Je me suis engagé dans les différentes instances territoriales sur le sud de la Normandie qui jouent un rôle majeur sur la gestion de l'eau. Le SMPGA pour la production et la distribution de l'eau, le syndicat d'assainissement de Granville pour le traitement des eaux usées et la communauté de communes de Granville pour la gestion des milieux aquatiques et la prévention des inondations, la protection également du trait de côte par rapport à la montée des eaux maritimes. Mon objectif est, on va essayer de vous mettre la photo. Mon objectif est de déployer l'expérimentation qui vous a été présentée par Yves avec différents axes sur le plan économique, en amplifiant la récupération de l'énergie pour l'ensemble des installations du SMPGA, car nous avons de nombreuses installations du nord au sud du territoire. Nous avons également un projet d'expérimentation d'autonomie en eau et en énergie avec un pilote que nous souhaitons mener sur les îles Chausées avec une usine de désalinisation. Sur le plan de l'environnement, nous avons les deux projets qui vous ont été présentés par Yves, l'alimentation des vélos le long du parcours qui va être installé le long de l'axe littoral de la Manche, et d'autre part, la sécurisation de jour comme de nuit des piétons comme des pistes cyclables. Dès que la crise sanitaire sera terminée, ce que nous souhaitons tous, Yves et moi serions très heureux de vous accueillir dans notre belle région, à la fois pour vous présenter nos équipements et également nos projets. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent, and thank you very much to all the panelists there. I guess we'll open it up now to questions, and again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat button, which you will find along the bottom. And we have one in there already from Helena Ramos. But before I get to Helena's question, I want to put one of my own to both Pedro and Joaquin, just from the point of view of, and maybe also Simon, from the point of view of regulation. Having seen the results of the REDAWN project, do you have any sort of ideas as to how hydropower of this nature in water networks could be incentivized in a practical sense? What could be done from the regulator's point of view, or is there an appetite for something to be done? I'll give you an example. At one of our project meetings a long time ago, my colleague Armando Caravetta, who was chairing the first session, proposed a European directive which would mandate any pressure reducing valve in Europe which is wasting more than 10 kilowatts must be converted into hydropower, otherwise that energy is purposely wasted. Now, I'm not sure that we will go that far, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts on how it could be practically incentivized.
You want me to start?
Please, Pedro, yeah.
Okay, so when we are using the water mains and water services or water main pipes to actually generate electricity, it makes absolute sense. The issue is, when are we generating and when is consumption required? Because in my opinion, the three biggest challenges, apart from the environmental one and the biodiversity preservation, is about local balancing in terms of supply and demand, consumption and generation. And it is about how you manage the mix of renewable sources to make sure that you are always able to comply with the demand that you have in your system, both globally in terms of the national grid or at the local level. So what I think we need to is the infrastructure, the water infrastructure and the electricity infrastructure, they actually belong to different entities, both on the IPP side and also on the distribution operators. And so from a regulatory point of view, for this to make sense, we need to make sure who does the CapEx investment and who benefits from that electricity generation. And is that electricity used for self-consumption on the schemes, or can it be used to sell on the market? So all of these questions we need to address, because the clean energy package is focusing us to decentralize electricity generation, to make sure that local communities can have their own sources of energy and they can use the grid to sell and buy electricity as they see fit and required. But we also need to understand how this investment can be brought to life, on the sense that we need a very simple business case, which is the amount of CapEx and OpEx we need for this to be generating electricity, and who is going to consume that electricity, and at what price and for how long. Because otherwise we don't have a bankable case. And if we don't have a bankable case, we can try this on, let's say, on the research and development or technology deployment perspective, but we cannot massify it in market terms. But I actually think that if we look this as a complementary source of power that can be generated from existing infrastructure with just an extra CapEx to be installed to make sure that we can use this energy from the flow and the fall of water, that we basically can actually use it. And as you mentioned, it doesn't make any sense to lose this energy with pressure reduction valves not generating electricity. But the issue, who does the assets belong to and where is this electricity going to be sold, are two main issues that need to be addressed, because otherwise you might be generating electricity where you don't have consumption, or the other way around if you don't have other sources of renewable power.
Great, thanks. There are other questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody, Joaquin or Simon, feels strongly on an answer there.
Yes, I totally agree with Pedro. At least in Spain, we are in the middle of developing all the legal framework for self-consumption, sharing self-consumption facilities, energy communities, and so on. And I think that when we talk about this, all people are thinking about photovoltaic. But this, I think that at least for me, REDAWN project give me some very important inputs to start thinking in other type of technologies. As I mentioned, I would like to work more closely with the University of Cordoba, analyzing the result of the pilots, analyzing not only in the framework of agriculture, but also in residential buildings or so on, how this technology could be applied. And as I mentioned, also we, as Andalusia region, we are managing different incentive schemes. These incentive schemes are quite open. We don't fix any kind of technology. We talk about renewable energy. So this kind of technology could be integrated in all these incentive schemes that we have. But as I mentioned, we will need more information, and for that, I think that in the coming weeks we will talk with Veraguas and University of Cordoba to see the possibility to expand this technology in Andalusia.
Okay.
Can I just
go ahead,
yeah,
Simon?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. The challenge we face in the UK is the legislation surrounding the feed-in tariff subsidy mechanism means you cannot use the water twice. So we've looked at using wastewater for hydro. A number of our members, Scottish, Welsh Water, for example, have hydro schemes. They've looked at how they can use overspill or wastewater from some of their schemes into additional hydro schemes, but the legislation will not allow the water that's been through the turbine once to benefit from the feed-in tariff to go through a similar process again and get secondary payments. So the legislation that we have in this country is so tight that it won't allow the initiative that you've just described. I mean, a lot of members would like to do that. We can't do it simply because of legislation. You could have the benefit of the additional generation, but there'll be no subsidies supported.
Great, thanks, Simon.
Let me just add something to that.
Go ahead, Pedro. Yeah.
Of course, the support schemes, as we mentioned, and of course the feed-in tariffs, as the initial support scheme was designed, is the option that every technology is looking for and they would like to have. The issue is that the clean energy package, when they were designed, the initial in 2016, and that is now being implemented in the member states' legal frameworks, coming from the directives, Renewable Directive, Electricity Market Directive, we are coming to the conclusion that the Commission and the European Union does not want to award feed-in tariffs. They want to give you a support scheme that you can actually sell electricity in the market as long as there is demand. And this is the issue that we need to be able to balance and manage, because a contract for difference at the end of the day works like a feed-in tariff as long as you control market deviations. And so this is where the things started to get complicated. And I think there is a space for this, but I agree with Simon. There is regulation that it's required for balancing at the local level to make sure that you can actually manage this, not being worried with some system that is working 300 kilometers away with 100 megawatts of power, because it's not the same scope of electricity generation.
Thanks, Pedro. And Simon, just picking up on one other thing you mentioned, that you had over 100 inquiries about Pico Hydro power plants of different kinds in the last year. We focused a lot on pump-as turbines in this project, but not exclusively. And I was just wondering if you had any experience of what the sort of technology solutions are there aside from pump-as turbines. Do you see a lot of developments in that space?
I see a lot of people trying to develop ideas in that space. The challenge they're all facing is funding and getting someone to believe in the project. In the past 12 months, and genuinely the number of inquiries range from totally impractical to quite possible. But the challenge is they always come to BHA for two reasons. One is to get advice free of charge, and we're a membership organisation, so we have to look after our members first and foremost. And secondly, they come to us to see if we can find access for them to technical expertise and funding. And there are some quite innovative ideas about pumps as turbines. There's a company called Advanced Pump and Hydro in the UK, which have developed quite a unique product. There's also a French company called Turbiwatt, I think, has developed something similar. But the challenge will always be to try and get the financing to make these projects viable. And unless that happens, they remain on the drawing board, as it were. I think one of the challenges we have, and this is just a view taken by me and others in the BHA, is that the current government is not particularly visionary in the way it sees the energy landscape in the future. And I think that's disappointing, because it means that a lot of people with some quite innovative ideas and ideas will never get the opportunity to see their ideas become real. The obsession with offshore wind by the current government means they just don't look at anything else at the moment, and that's disappointing. We're trying to change that by lobbying them, but it's a bit like turning the oil tanker. It'll take a long time before they get to see the benefits of some of these ideas.
Great, thank you, Simon. We were due to stop at 12:05, but I've just been told on the chat here that I have permission to keep going for another 5 minutes, which is great. So there was a couple of other questions on the chat. I was just wanted to direct one to Vincent in SMPGA. So this question then comes in from Claudio, and Claudio Castro is a manager of Hydropower on the island of Madeira, a company that executes micro water projects and detects leakage. So he would like to know if there is a concern on micro water project managers. So I guess I'm asking Eve as a, sorry, not Eve and Vincent, maybe Eve is beside you, of a water project manager to detect leaks as well as implement hydro at the same time, I guess is the question being asked. So we might have to use the translation for this.
Je réponds en français.
Oui.
Effectivement, l'un de nos soucis majeurs est
One of our main concerns
la qualité des canalisations.
is the quality
Nous avons
of
d'ailleurs
the
un plan de
canals
renouvellement du réseau régulier
and how we can further
pour
develop
lequel
the
nous
network,
investissons régulièrement plusieurs millions d'euros.
which is a thing that costs
Notre
several
taux de
million
rendement
euros, of
est
course.
actuellement de 87,5%. C'est ça, 87,5%. Et nous
We are
souhaiterions
now on
des hauts niveaux de
47%
rendement.
so
Ça veut dire que nous
of
avons une
full
perte de l'ordre de
development.
12%,
So
12,5%.
that means that the
Souhaiterions
leaks
descendre à
equals
10% de perte.
12%, and we would like to narrow it down to
Et donc,
10%.
deux moyens, l'amélioration
So
et la rénovation
the
des canalisations
improving
de
of
distribution, que
the
les canalisations de
distribution
production ont
and
été rénovées
the
entièrement,
production have
presque,
been a focus. We have
et également la pose de
improved the overall
compteurs de
situation.
sectorisation qui permettent d'identifier des
And
fuites
we've
par
also
secteur.
tried to implement a new
Nous
small
avons
technology to
également
detect those
la
leaks.
mise en place progressive de la radio-relève sur les compteurs des abonnés.
We have
qui va nous permettre
introduced
des relevés beaucoup
a
plus
counting
fréquents
system
à
on
partir
the
de
meters of
fin 2021,
the
début
users, and
2022,
we are going to expand
qui
on
va nous
that
permettre justement
starting at the end
d'identifier
on
les fuites
2021,
éventuelles
so that we can
chez nos
detect
abonnés. Donc nos
some
deux aspects, c'est
leaks
la distribution, les réseaux de
directly
distribution sur l'ensemble du territoire,
at the level
mais
of
également
the households, so the final
les
users.
raccordements aux
So we've
abonnés.
been trying to
Avec un objectif
take all of this
d'amélioration
into
régulière
account so that
pour
we, in
suivre
general,
les pertes
on a
éventuelles d'eau.
regular basis, we can keep an eye on what is
Est-ce que
going on in terms
j'ai
of
répondu à votre
leaks. I don't know
question?
if I've answered your question.
Thank you, Vincent, for that. Yeah. So I think I have time for just one last question. So I'm going to ask the first one in the list here, which came from Helena Ramos, and this was to Pedro. So Helena was asking how you see the development of micro solutions which are hybrid, so including solar, for example, for the decentralization of energy production, applicable to the water sector. So Pedro, you're muted still.
The most quoted sentence in 2020 is "you're on mute." I see that there is absolutely a complementarity regarding the two sources, basically because you can actually have, during the absence of sun radiation, also through the water consumption and through the flows in the pipes, the possibility to generate electricity. It really depends on the balance of how much kilowatt hours or megawatt hours you are going to need and what can the micro hydro provide. But if we look for a regulatory framework where this at the local level can be complemented and balanced, I think it makes absolute sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Pedro, and thanks to all the speakers and the questioners for a very interesting discussion there. So we're over the 12 time that I was given extra time for. We had one or two more questions in the chat, but we can roll those over to the final Q&A. And so I'm going to hand back to Terry, I guess, who's going to introduce Ismael.
Okay, thank you very much, Aonghus. That was a very, very interesting breakout session, keynote session. Thank you to all your speakers. As I said at the very beginning, when I introduced the REDAWN project 3 hours ago, the project is funded by Atlantic Area. And we would never we wouldn't be here today without the money that Atlantic Area gave us to manage this project. So we're delighted to have succeeded in getting that money from Atlantic Area. And I'm also delighted to say that we have a presentation now from the Atlantic Area Joint Secretariat, Deputy Director, Ismael Morán-García. Ismael is what we refer to as our project desk officer. And I've known him and enjoyed working with him for over 10 years now. He's a great guy. He is fantastic to work with. He's currently the Deputy Director and Project Manager of the Joint Secretariat of the Interreg Atlantic Area Programme 2014 to 2020 in Portugal. So, Ismael, if you're there, I'm happy to hand over to you if you want to unmute yourself, and I think you possibly have a slideshow that you want to share with us too. I'm not sure if Charlotte's going to run that for you or whether you're going to run it yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much, Terry. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can, perfectly.
Thank you very much for your words. Yeah, we have been working for a long, long time now. Hello to everybody, and thanks for allowing me to be part of the REDAWN's final event, adapted to the current circumstances we are all facing in these testing times. REDAWN is one of our projects working on energy, more precisely in reducing energy dependency. And it is actually the only one working on hydropower in public water networks in the Atlantic area. It works, as you can realize, in a wide geography in the Atlantic by covering the 5 member states of the program. And it also works in partnership with an Italian organization, a university. Partners of the project have a long history of working in the Atlantic area, some of them for more than 10 years, as Terry said, and other even in previous programming periods. All of them are very and well known for their expertise and know-how in the files and the areas covered by the project. It is very satisfying for me to see how the project is also a kind of trigger for other ideas for what I see today, and it motivates other organizations to implement their ideas or pilot actions on the ground. I would like to make a quick presentation of the program and of course its projects. This is what we are for. We live for the project, and this is what we do in a way. Of course, it will be in general terms and give you some information about the future. When I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about the new programming period, which is the 21-27 programming period for the Interreg programs in general, and we'd like to share with you some challenges for the Atlantic area. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that you have a very fruitful day in working terms for this meeting today, and I'm sure that we will keep working together. Thank you. The Atlantic area is one of the oldest programs in transnational cooperation. It started in the 90s through a pilot project called Atlantis, where some Atlantic European countries started sharing experience and sometimes know-how on certain thematic areas. Since then, the Atlantic Area Programme has been an important EU funding instrument supporting transnational cooperation projects. For over 20 years now, this programme has provided significant levels of funding across regions in a wide field of thematic areas that were changing or evaluating along the different programming periods. The goal and mission of the project approved for the current Atlantic area have been helped to reduce regional disparities and increase cohesion in the territory, create real added value to transnational cooperation. Both these items are a capitalisation task
working on previous projects, previous results, reinforcing and enlarging networks. They've increased the dialogue among different and relevant stakeholders and also their engagement, since it allows to involve more and different stakeholders in issues such as maritime, for example, or more transversal ones, such as environmental, creating added value and making projects more effective and efficient in terms of impact. The program has worked very hard in building trust across the borders and foster Atlantic area member states to be more competitive in specific economic areas, and contributed and improved the inclusion of the Atlantic regions in a specific strategy. I'm talking about, of course, the Atlantic strategy. They deliver territorial cohesion. This is in new results, new knowledge. They shared experience and enhanced capacities. Some organizations that work in isolation, or in the best of the cases at the cross-border level, found in the Atlantic Area Program the capacity or the investment to create networks. The program has reinforced them from a transnational approach to provide a joint solution to common problems that cannot be tackled in isolation, and created an important pool of knowledge in different thematic areas. The projects have support regions and cities to make a better use of their research. It has been possible to promote collaboration between Atlantic cities or regions, creating that we can call transnationality. This cooperation has allowed, for example, to have more resources managed jointly in helping to prevent maritime accidents, maritime pollutions, improve maritime risk planning. The projects enabled regions and cities to jointly tackle challenges that go beyond their borders. Once again, as I said before, there has been a big investing job to provide joint solutions to common problems that, as I said, cannot be tackled in isolation. Also, by bringing together authorities with local agents and private investment, projects were able to have a greater impact. Based on their results, the program allows project beneficiaries to give feedback to policymakers by sensibility actions, awareing them of the real problems that are also translated in a more accurate legislation. Our projects also contribute to the modernization and Europeization, if I may say, of the public administration. It is also time to talk a little bit about the future. In relation to the future of Interreg and the Atlantic Area Program specifically, it is first necessary to give a few words about the new cohesion policy to better frame the new program. This new cohesion policy will have a focus on 5 investment priorities, where the EU is best placed to deliver a smarter Europe, a greener, carbon and free Europe, a more connected Europe, a more social Europe, a Europe closer to the citizens. It will have a more tailored approach to regional development. There will be a simplification work, shorter, fewer, clearer rules, that for business and entrepreneurs, beneficiaries benefiting from the EU support, this new framework will offer them less red tape, let's say, with simpler ways to claim payments use simplified cost options. In order to facilitate synergies, a single rule book now covers 7 EU funds implemented in partnership with member states, which will be a shared management, let's say. The Commission also proposes lighter controls for programs with good track records, with an increased reliance on national systems and the extension of the single audit principle to avoid application of checks. It will have a more flexible framework. The new framework combines the necessary stability in investment planning with the appropriate level of budgetary flexibility to cope with the unforeseen events. A mid-term review will determine if changes in the programs are needed for the last 2 years of the funding period. This will be done based on emerging priorities, performance of the programs, and the most recent country-specific recommendations. It will have more opportunities for synergies within the EU budget toolbox. The single rule book covering cohesion policy funds and the Asylum and Migration Fund will facilitate the setting up of local migrant integration strategies supported by the EU resource used in synergy. Outside the single rule book, synergies will be made easier with other EU instruments like the Common Agricultural Policy, Horizon Europe, the LIFE program or Erasmus+. Rules will be reinforced to better performing EU investments. All programs will still have a performance framework with quantifiable targets. This is in relation to the indicators. The new framework introduces an annual performance review in the form of a policy dialogue between program authorities and the Commission. Performance of the programs will also be evaluated, assessed during a mid-term review for transparency reasons, and so citizens can follow the progress made. Member states will have to report all implementation data every 2 months, and the Cohesion Open Data Platform will be automatically updated. There will be an increase of the use of financial instruments. Grants alone cannot address the significant investment gaps. They can be efficiently complemented by financial instruments which have a leverage effect and are closer to the market. On a voluntary basis, member states will be able to transfer a part of their cohesion policy reserves to the new centrally managed InvestEU fund to access the guarantee provided by the EU budget. Combining grants and financial instruments is made easier, and the new framework also includes special provisions to track more private capital. It will put more effort in communication to improve the visibility of cohesion policy. For a Europe even closer to citizens, more emphasis is put on the need to better communicate the positive results of cohesion policies. Member states and regions have reinforced requirements in terms of communication, such as the organization of events for the opening of big EU-funded projects and the development of social media outreach plans. At the same time, communication on EU-funded projects is simplified with a single branding covering all different EU funds, a single portal displaying all available funding for business, and a single project database run by the Commission. Of course, there's a special chapter for Interreg, which includes the simplification for interregional and cross-border cooperation in terms of finding use. Interreg programs will help member states to overcome cross-border obstacles and develop joint services, and building on the successful pilot actions from the current programming period, which finishes now in 2020, the Commission proposes to create the interregional innovative investment. Now, in relation to the Atlantic Area Program, we can inform that the new program is being designed. We are currently working on it. It will have a new geographical area, and not only because of the UK withdrawal called Brexit, but it is already too soon to talk about this. It will, of course, enhance the heritage of previous programming periods. Will work on capitalization by bringing added value, which is requested, of course. There will be the reduction and administrative burden is also one of the targets to tackle, and will contribute to a better synergy between European territorial cooperation, so-called ETC, and strategies. Will work, let's say, like a kind of link in the programs and strategy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Very much to Ismael. That was very interesting. It's good to hear about the changes that are being made. So our final discussion and question and answer session is with Professor Helena Ramos from IST in Portugal. Again, I've worked with Helena now for 3 years. We were delighted to be a guest at IST pre-COVID, and we were made to feel very welcome. So Helena, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. Well, let's start with discussion and questions and answers section. I put on the chat a point to you in order to send some doubts or some comments. I will share. Let me share this. Okay, this is in this section. I think we can see. I also prepare 2 questions to initialize our discussion, and I received some of attendees, some of colleagues, and of course, with the presentation of Ismael, I think some of these questions are more or less guides. Well, I will start with one of these possible questions, and it is about how can the water sector support the capacity to respond to dynamics associated with climate change, the decarbonization, energy transition, digital transformation, and circular economy. I think it is very important, this project in terms of the energy production and at the same time the control of leakage water and energy, and how we can improve more or use or continue our project in order to be possible to reply to this question. I will pay attention to the chat, and in the chat I have another question by my colleague Professor Aonghus Mc Nabola, asking about measure areas for new research in this area. We observed the presentation of Ismael, and I think you have here different interesting points, namely the new geographical areas or the balance between regions in a certain country, regarding the regional developments. It is important to have clear rules to apply this type of solutions. When we think, for example, in smart water grids together with smart energy grids, okay, we need locally in different places energy available in order to feed, for example, some artificial intelligence sensors in order to control all and to manage better our water uses. Well, I think it is very important some flexible framework to have in this subject and to put together different synergies between solutions and regions. Another important point is to improve the viability of this type of solutions. What will happen after the REDAWN? It is very interesting. During the REDAWN, we developed several solutions, but after the REDAWN, in terms of the results to the European Union, for the policymakers, after the project, what will happen with this? The barriers that exist, and we notice they exist because from the recent years, we noticed some type of mix between water and energy in a water energy nexus. But some years ago, we analyzed separately. Water is one thing, energy is another thing. Nowadays, we have another view, a new paradigm to put together both water and energy. I don't know if my colleagues can add more ideas here in this discussion. If you want, we can speak, we can intervene. For example, in terms of the new cohesion policy, I think DAWN, I'm not sure if DAWN is present now, can help us to understand, oh, it will be the integration in the new cohesion of policy makers regarding the application of this type of solutions. Another thing is the importance to have a mix of renewable energy sources, not only water, but why not to complement water with another intermittent energy sources and use water to stabilize these intermittent energy sources, for example, such as the sun and the wind. They are not available all the time, but we can, integrating with a hydropower solution, we can put this, uniformize the availability of this type of energy. Okay, hybrid solutions will appear and pump storage solutions too, even in a micro scale or in a large scale. I think you have to open our mind, okay, to apply this type of combinations together with the energy smart grids, putting our smart water grids, improve them and put available in terms of the flexibility, or in terms of the integration of the other sources, the efficiency of these systems, because we know that we have in some cases, for example, in some regions, the level of leakage is very, very high, can attain 70%. Imagine we have water source, okay, and 70% of this volume is lost. So you need to create solutions, integrate solutions to improve this towards a digital twin, towards the circular economy, avoiding to waste water and energy. Aonghus, I don't know if you want to add more fire in our discussion.
Thanks, Helena. I put my hand up as I just wanted to make a comment rather than a question. Sorry, frog in my throat. I just wanted to congratulate, first of all, because this is our final event and it's somewhat a sad event nonetheless. I wanted to congratulate Terry and everyone in Action Renewables on managing REDAWN so well over the last couple of years. And I also wanted to say well done to Charlotte and Kemi and all the interpreters and everyone who's been working in the background on running today, which I think has gone very well. So I just, not a very scientific discussion point, Helena, but I just wanted to make those two remarks.
Thank you very much. And it was a very interesting point, because only based on this we could attain this level in terms of results obtained in this project. Well, if you don't mind, I would like also to make this. Let me. Sorry, I have to share as a possible second question. Okay, once the water sector systems consume high quantities of energy, of course we need energy to distribute water for the population, and we can use water to produce energy. So this interconnection, this nexus between water and energy are crucial for near future solutions, of course. So this sector, water sector, consume high quantities of energy and present excessive water pressure with associated high levels of leakage. In light of sustainable future, induces significant water energy losses, needing better system efficiency solutions. How it can be addressed to overcome this problem based on the results of our REDAWN. Well, I put at the bottom some ideas, okay? In the water sectors, it's necessary to develop different types of studies, namely the technical, economic, social, and environmental studies. I think in REDAWN, with different work package, we developed all of these type of studies, focused on the opportunities to attain the energy neutrality by integrating renewable energy with hydropower, of course, and other renewable intermittent sources, to obtain the centralized energy solutions towards smart water grids. I think it's a very interesting point for the near future. As I presented in my first one, okay, when we are concerned with the dynamics associated with the climate change, the carbonization in energy transition, digital transformation, digital energy. I think adding social utility, meeting some environmental requirements, that we can get this with a water solution, hydropower solution, achieving efficiency gains, and exceeding quality standards in the field of water services. I think they are essential to well-being, public health, environment, economy, and sustainable development. All of us know this, but applying and putting this to improve our water sector, I think it is very important. Not in a micro scale, but covering all the scales, medium and large scale. Well, I don't know if there is, okay. There is here another question from Alice. As an innovative and patented technology for hydroelectric exploitation, a technology proven since 2010 in Spain, France, and Colombia. Well, it's if there is an innovative and patented technology, this technology is well known in large scales, and we are trying to bring and to use in a macro scale. The picture that Simon paints is not an optimistic one of those who have technology-based solutions or opportunities for application. For how long more will micro hydropower require support from government or others in order to realize its potential to contribute to the greater challenge of water conservation and the carbonization of water production and distribution? It's true. It's true. It is very important when we are thinking that we are losing a lot of water due to the leakage. Why? Because the system, water sector, it's a complex system, and it is designed for a lifetime of 20 years or more. And of course, during the first period, if you are thinking in an expansion of the populations, in the first 12 or 15 years, it is working not very well. So you need to improve. We need to think not in a long course, but in a short course to see better results in terms of the efficiency of the water system. Another question comes from Kemi. Helena, I also think that social value of micro hydropowers are also important. That's true. That's true. To have available water in any place at any time, it's very important. And most of us consider that it is normal. But in some regions, in some countries, it is not normal. And you need to improve this. And it is good to see companies like SNPGA exploiting the energy in their water networks to provide social good. That's right. With this, we can reduce the energy tariffs and water tariffs. Okay, we can. You need to implement this, like Enrique, who is made in the project, like IG Energy make in the project, etc. You need to go further and implement much more, and stop with the idea that water it's only from the water companies and energy from the energy companies.
Helena, it's Terry here. So I think at this stage, if you don't mind, I'll probably take over again and say thank you very much for managing on your own. And part of the reason why you were probably managing on your own is because, you know, we've been going since 8 o'clock this morning. We're probably all feeling a little bit tired. We need to have some food and some coffee. And because we're not in the same room, we can't do that together. Someday we'll be able to do that again. So all that remains for me at this point is to say thank you to all the contributors, all of the speakers, many of whom are from all around the world, not on our time zone. Some of them got up in the middle of the night, quite literally, to speak to us today. I think Alan's going to put a slide up for me, which will show a link to our website and where you can see all the material that we've been working on, our social media addresses and so on. And it just remains for me to say thank you all for attending. I look forward to the days when we can meet in person again. That's it, everybody. You can now go off and make yourself a sandwich and have a cup of tea. And thank you very much for attending. Goodbye.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well done, Terry and team.
Bye from Andalusia.
Bye-bye.
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 Goodbye. Goodbye.